in your old television set, trade it up to a DuMont.
WABD, New York.
The Johns Hopkins Science Review, presented by the Johns Hopkins University and WAAM in Baltimore. This is the Johns Hopkins University, famed for 75 years for its contributions to science and the humanities. Here in its many laboratories, Hopkins scientists are constantly probing into the basic, still unknown secrets of science, which, when discovered, are translated into benefits to be enjoyed by you, the people of America. This week, we invite you to join us on a visit to our studio. And to begin this visit to the WAAM studio, here is Lynn Poole of the Johns Hopkins University.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Johns Hopkins Science Review. I wonder if any of you have ever visited a television station and have watched a program being produced. You have? Well, perhaps you have, but there are thousands of others who have never visited a television station and would like to. Now, I know this because everywhere I go, people ask questions about the production of the Johns Hopkins Science Review. How is the program done? What is the studio like? What goes on behind the scenes? Now, most people are very much interested in such a thing. And we have a lot of requests from people asking them if we could come to the studio and watch us as we work here every week. Now, unfortunately, we can't invite you all to come to the studio and see what happens. So tonight, we have planned a special program for you. A program on which we are going to turn the cameras inside on the studio and let you see exactly what happens here while we're presenting the Johns Hopkins Science Review each week. Now, to begin with, we'd like to take you about 120 feet from the spot where I'm sitting at the moment and show you the master control room. And we'll show you what goes on there just 2 minutes before this program goes on the air.
AT&T, this is WAAM television. I'd like to have an audio check. All right, just a minute. I'm feeding you an 8 dB level. Can we call you some peaks? Okay, -1, -2, -3, 0, -4,
little low on level.
-5.
Bring it up. You check?
No hum, no noise.
Check.
No quiet. Okay.
Hello, studio. This is Master. All check to AT&T. Stand by 2 minutes.
Now, this probably looks as complicated to you as it does to me. So let's simplify it a little bit and ask Mr. Ben Wolf, Director of Engineering for WAAM, to come in and ask him to tell us how the television picture and sound leaves this television station.
Prior to airtime, the video engineer, Bob Hankey, was checking with the American Telephone and Telegraph Company to make sure that the levels were of sufficient magnitude to go to the network. The audio engineer, Andy Jackson, was doing similar work with the AT&T as far as the audio was concerned. In addition, both the video and the audio engineers were setting up auxiliary circuits in the event of failure over normal facilities. These circuits are set up on patching bays located here in master control. Unfortunately, while you can't see these patching bays right now, you will see them later over in studio control again. It is through these patching bays that we can reach most of the complex equipment located here in master control. Monitoring of the video signal is done here by means of an oscilloscope. Monitoring of the audio signal is done by means of a standard volume indicator, such as that used on many TV shows as an applause meter. Fred, can you get a shot of the volume indicator? That's it right there. In addition, if any film is used on the Johns Hopkins Science Review, the level of the film as well as the sound are controlled from master control and sent through to the studio. From the studio, the signal comes back to master control into a stabilizing amplifier and is then dispatched to the network. Located here in master control is the master sync generator, which sends stabilizing signals up the network in order to prevent any rolling of the signal and keep it in frame. In addition, the distribution system is also located here in master control, and while the signal coming from the studio is sent to the network, another portion of it located here in this distribution bank, if you can see it, is sent out for local transmission. And in addition to that electrical distribution system, we still have another which permits us to monitor the signal on its way south coming back from New York. Audio facilities from master control are about the same as insofar as amplification is concerned, and standard audio amplifiers as well as volume indicator equipment is used. And briefly, that's about it from here.
Now, a television station is very much like the human body. It has a lot of nerve centers. All these nerve centers must be coordinated, must act together when a program is being put on the air. Now, the master control, the room you have just seen, is one of those nerve centers. Another nerve center is the studio control room. The studio control room is close by the studio here, a large booth separated from the studio by a double plate glass window. In this room sits the video and audio technicians, the associate director and the director. Now, as all of you know, Paul Kane is the director of the Johns Hopkins Science Review, sitting in the control room now. And Paul, I wish you'd describe what your activities are in there.
Thank you, Lynn. Mr. Poole has already told you who I am, so very quickly I'd like to introduce the other men here in studio control with whom I work. Here on my extreme left, Marty, would you turn around, please? Martin Yanuzzi, our sound or audio engineer. And sitting next to me, Ed Sarro. Ed is associate director on the show, helps me with the timing of the script, the music, the camera work. He's a very handy man to have available to you. And here to my right, Jim Gerchik. Jim is the video or picture engineer. Now, I guess you may have wondered what this massive equipment is here behind me. So very briefly, I would like to try to give you a rough sketch of this equipment. We'll start to the left. Andy, pan right just a little, please. Now, here we see on your screen now 3 camera monitors, a camera monitor or picture screen, and I'll point to camera monitor 1, which corresponds directly with a camera 1, which is in the studio. The same thing applying to camera monitor 2, connected directly with camera 2, and 3 connected with camera 3. On each picture screen, I can see the very same picture that each cameraman is seeing in his viewfinder on camera. Now, how do these men hear me as far as direction is concerned? Directly in front of me, if I may slide out of the way, is a microphone. Andy, would you hit it on a close-up, please? Through this microphone, which incidentally is connected directly with the headsets that the cameramen are wearing, and I might add the stage manager, Harding Roberts, or floor manager, who is the liaison between myself to Mr. Poole and our guests. They can hear me through this particular mic. Andy, a cover shot, please, on a 1-inch. Fine. Now, in addition to that microphone, we have another intercom that connects us directly with other parts of the building, such as the projection room, the announce booth, and master control, which you've just seen. Now, moving further over to my right, you see Martin Yanuzzi at the audio console, and on it, put a 2 up, Andy, you see a series of dials and knobs and switches, and to Marty's right are 2 turntables on which we have records that we can play sound effects or music. And by controlling these dials, pan back, Andy, please. By controlling these various dials, Marty is able to give us the right sound at the right time. Now, if we may move further over here to our left and take a look at the 4 monitors in front of us now. These monitors, we'll start with the 2 on the right, which are film camera monitors, film camera monitor 1 and film camera monitor 2 that I'm now pointing at. On it we can see slide or film, as the case may be. Each particular camera monitor will give us either slide or film. They're very versatile and very flexible. I'll call into the projection room now and ask our projectionist, Pat Palillo, to put up a slide. Pat? Fine. You've just seen a slide go up on film camera monitor number 2, and this particular monitor or picture could be put up on the air at my discretion. So, as you see it right now. Now we'll go back and have Pat roll a film on film camera monitor 1. Roll it, Pat. Now you see the film go by, and that too can be put on the air as you now see it. Very briefly, the reason you might be seeing these two lines that I'm pointing at now, these light lines on your screen, are because the camera that is now taking this picture and the film camera, which is coming from the projection room, are not in phase. Now let's move over further to our left, and we see a preview monitor, or an off-the-air monitor. This monitor, preview monitor, meaning exactly what the word applies. On it we can preview any picture that is either coming in or going from the station. Directly in front of me is the monitor from which I work. It is the on-the-air monitor, and the picture that leaves our studio, the one that I've selected from the various other monitors, the one that leaves our studio and comes directly into your home. Now, how is all this done? How are these things controlled, video-wise or picture-wise? Andy, would you put a 4 down here on the buttons? Dolly in, I'll try to get out of your way. Fine, sir. Now here we have 2 rows of parallel buttons and a fader that I'm now touching. And by punching these various buttons and by moving this fader, the various combinations thereof will give us the various effects that we want to achieve picture-wise. Andy, would you dolly back on a 1-inch, please? Give us a cover. Now to tell you more about the technical phase of studio control operation, I'd like you to meet Glenn Lehman, our chief engineer. Glenn?
Thank you, Paul. Well, suppose we start over here at the camera controls, first of all, where Mr. Gurgic is our video engineer. As you can see, if we could have a close-up on one of the camera controls, Andy, each particular camera control has a large number of knobs associated with it. In all, there are 38 for each camera. Now, Jim, if you'll go through your beam adjustment, we'll show you some of the effects that are possible through misadjustment of some of these controls, and you can see that the picture can do almost anything if it were not for our video engineer. We won't go into the other controls this time. It'll be too time-consuming. Now, the picture, after it leaves the camera control, comes to the switcher, which we have just gone over, where each camera is associated with a row of buttons so that each one may be punched up on an inactive row in order to set up the next shot. Now, the picture, after leaving the switcher, travels way over here to the other side of the studio control room, where it goes into a stabilizing amplifier, which is this particular piece of gear here. In the stabilizing amplifier, the picture is mixed with other signals coming from the master control room. Now, these signals are not seen. They are merely those that keep your picture in frame and keep it from rolling. The stabilizing amplifier has 2 outputs, one of which goes to master control and then on its way to you. The other one goes back to the monitor above the switcher so that the director may see everything just as it leaves the control room. So much for the video. We'll come down here to the audio. We'll start with the audio patching bay, where we have a number of jacks and patch cords. There are 18 microphone positions in this particular studio, and by use of these patch cords, which I'm holding now, we can go into any position in the studio and bring that microphone over here to the audio console. Our audio engineer, Mr. Yanuzzi over here, then is able to control the volume of any microphone in the studio. In addition, the 2 turntables and sound from the film projection room. Above on the top level of the console, you see a row of keys which enable him to select any number of lines, incoming and outgoing, as the program might require, or on instructions from master control. And that, very briefly, is how we do it from here.
Thank you, Glenn. Now stand by on Lynn, please. Hold 1. Cue Lynn.
And now back here in the studio, I want you to meet some other important people who helped produce the Johns Hopkins Science Review. Robert Fenwick is our associate producer. Bob, come in here. I want you to know Bob Fenwick. Bob works with us at the university and begins on these programs from the first time we get an idea for a program until it's through, off the air, and you're looking at another program. Now, here in the studio, we also have our art director, Barry Mansfield. Barry is there on the left, and Bob Demetrician, his assistant, who helps him prepare the sets and the designs that are seen on this show. Both of them work together in a large studio, an art studio, which is just back of us here. And here's another man that has a lot to do on the show, Harding Roberts. Harding Roberts is our floor manager. Harding takes the directions from Paul Kane from in there in the studio, relays them to us out here, and tells us what to do. And over here is Bob Lee. Bob operates this long boom microphone that keeps the microphone trailing us around the studio so that you can hear what we're saying. Well, now you have now met most of the people that help produce the Johns Hopkins Science Review. All except those indispensable cameramen that keep your pictures going, and our two narrators, but you'll meet them in a moment. Well, now that you've had a brief tour of the studio and the station, seen some of the things that go on here, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start from the very beginning and ask you to watch a typical Johns Hopkins Science Review. You'll remember the first thing you always see is a film of the Johns Hopkins University which comes up. And we're going to take you out into the projection room, which is about 100 feet from here, where Pat Palillo, our projectionist, will put that film on the air so that you can see it. Then we're going to swing the cameras around and let you see two men whose voices are very familiar to you, our narrators, Joel Chaseman and Ted Jaffe. You'll see how the program develops from then on. It will be very familiar to you. We're going to come back into the studio and into the studio control room. And in the studio control room, we're going to ask Joel Chaseman if he'll dash across and stand by and give you a description of what you are seeing and interpolate some of the things that you are hearing. So let's go into the control room now and ask Paul Kane if he'll show us what happens 15 seconds before the Johns Hopkins Science Review goes on the air. And let me warn you, there are going to be a lot of strange things to see, this, that, and the other. You'll hear directions. It will all seem very confusing. But that's what happens 15 seconds before we get on the air and everything smooths out. Paul?
Okay, stand by, Master, and give me a time check, please.
Studio, this is Master. 15 seconds. Stand by.
All right, 15 seconds. Number one, opening shot. On your titles, pan left a little and up. Hold it. 3 in the projection room. Hold your shots. Okay, stand by. We have 5, 4, 3, 2. Roll your film. Music up. Dolly 1. Under and announce.
The Johns Hopkins Science Review, presented by the Johns Hopkins University and WAAM in Baltimore.
Music up.
This is the Johns Hopkins University, famed for 75 years for its cuts to science and the humanities.
Here in its many laboratories, Hopkins scientists are constantly probing into the basic, still unknown secrets of science, which, when discovered, will be translated into benefits to be enjoyed by you, the people of America. This week we present the Master Glassblower.
01 and Dolly. Music up. Announce.
To introduce this week's program, here is Lynn Poole of the Johns Hopkins University.
Cue Lynn.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to the Johns Hopkins Science Review. All of you have been to a county fair or a carnival in the summer or perhaps a world fair. And one thing you have certainly seen is a glassblower, the master glassblower that perhaps stands out in front of a big tent on which his picture is painted and says, "Come in and see the master glassblower and all the magnificent,
Number 3,
wonderful things
in
that
the
he makes."
studio, please.
Well, of course, that glassblower makes these little things that you buy to take home and put on your mantelpiece. The little reindeers, the ducks, the squirrels, the rabbits, the little animals that a lot of
Those
us
are
have in our
lenses, and
mantelpieces.
he's instructing his cameramen, who have a choice of 4 lenses on
This
each
man is
camera,
a
which
man
lens they should
Fan
use.
a lot of fun with.
Some stations
Things
call
that
them
he
in
makes are
millimeters,
very nice
so
to
you
have.
might hear a 50
But what I
millimeter
tell
lens
you,
called. We call them
great
here
lens
in
like
1,
Johns
2, or
Hopkins
6 the
also
approximate
has to
inch
have a glass
length
blower.
of the lens
You might wonder why.
because it's quicker
Well, it's
and
very
easier
important
for the
thing
cameraman to
down the hall.
to
understand.
have a
Let's
glass
go.
blower because
Now,
Move
number
down.
3, as you see, is
We're
moving down a
carrying on
long hall, which
scientific
leads to the
research
master
and
control
experiments.
area where
All
we
right,
were a
now
minute
one
ago
hold.
in the projection room and the
are
announce
made
booth.
to
He's
1
moving down into the
1,000
studio, and beyond him, through
have
that
to have
door, you can
special
see the studio.
special equipment.
And you can, of course,
for
see
their
Lynn
own
Poole, who's
research.
going on with this
equipment and
typical Johns
apparatus they
Hopkins
can't
Science
fly.
Review
Start down
program.
and back.
So we have with us tonight
We also
Mr.
have John
Lehman,
Lehman with us
the
tonight,
master
as
glass
Mr. Poole
blower
has
at
just
Roger,
told
Johns
you.
Hopkins University.
And now Dick Lusher
And
has
Dolly.
moved his camera over to get a
Tighten
picture
up, pan up.
of John Lehman.
Pan
The
up.
direction is pan up. You'll see the shot go up on John
Hold your
Lehman.
shot. Hold one.
And moving up is Dick Lusher. As Fred Wheelahan moves his camera in, you can see it being moved into the picture as Andy Bevan is taking this picture
Put a tight
from the
end in
camera
on your
back in
frame.
studio control room, right in
Number
back of
3.
Paul Kane.
Frame him, pan right.
Now, as we say frame him and pan
Pan
right,
right.
they're panning the camera right, moving it right so that the picture comes up on the left-hand side of the camera and gives what the director considers good composition.
All right, number 2.
And that's what
2-inch
we're
out
after.
in the studio.
So that you at home
Tighten
will
it up.
appreciate the show and some of the points of good
Tighten it up.
photographic
Tighten up, too.
composition, much as in your best salon prints. This, of course,
All
is
right,
in
hold
motion.
one.
Now we say hold one. That
Focus-
means he's ready to
focus
take the
3.
picture on camera number 1. He's got it on camera number 3 now.
Right.
As
move
soon as he
Mr.
pushes
Poole
the
in.
button or moves the lever that you
Move
saw
Mr.
earlier,
Poole in.
the picture on camera number
Coming in
1
on a two
will be
shot
on the
number
air.
1.
He's warning the cameraman
Man
now that they're
left
coming
one.
in on a two-shot, a
Dolly back
picture
a
of both Mr. Poole and Mr. Lehman on
Right.
camera number 1.
Okay.
Now he pushes the button on camera number 2,
Stand by to cue
and
Poole.
soon camera number 1 will be ready when
Stand
they cue
by.
Lynn Poole, and we'll see how an actual Johns Hopkins Science Review program goes from here.
Cue him.
Mr. Lehman, a moment ago, I told our friends why your work was so important at the university and how you stand behind the scientists and help them in their scientific research. I'd like to have you tell us a few things specifically about your work. We notice that as you
Stand
roll
up.
that glass in the flame, you keep
Down a
turning
little.
it.
Tighten up your shot. And
Well,
left.
the reason why I keep turning it, Mr. Poole, is to keep
All right,
that
number
glass
1, screen it all the way
evenly
down.
revolving at all times and to keep the heat evenly distributed. If I was
Let's do
to
a
stop
6 on
turning this
Dick
piece of
Lusher.
glass, it
Pan
would
left.
either be flat on one side or else I would get a kink in it. Now, your left hand has to know what your right hand is doing at all times. If I should happen to
All right,
put my
then
hands
on 3.
one way or the other, it would get a kink in it, such as I'll do now. You see that kink in there?
But you can get that kink out.
You can get that out just by,
Stand down
now I'll
on
have to
3.
keep working this thing for
Hold
quite a
3.
while now in order to
Switch
get
your
that
focus.
round. What I'm making now is a trap for one of the boys
You're
down
on.
at school. This here has to be a bulb 4
Stand right
inches
on.
in diameter
Hold 2.
with a sidearm on it.
Have a 2-shot on
And that's
1
what
on
I'm
the
doing
2-inch.
now. As I heat this glass
On
and
it,
push
Doug.
it together,
Fan
I'm
up.
weighting it up so it won't
And
be too
tighten it up.
thin.
Dolly in a little.
Well, as you've told us before, really the basis of
Fan right
your
on
work,
2.
one of the first things
Fan
you have
right.
to learn is to blow a perfect bulb.
Yes, that's one of the main things, that and pulling a
1.
point.
You're on.
Boy, my father used to tell me that I used to pull these points for 6 months at a time. And if I even stopped turning it, he'd say, turn it,
Right it in.
keep turning it all the time.
Try to execute.
You learned your trade from your father, you told us, when you were here on the Science Review before.
Yes,
3
I did.
minutes
I've been
to-
blowing
to
glasses.
3
I've been
minutes.
6 years old.
And you have a boy that's going to
Fan
blow
left.
glass after you.
Dolly
Yes,
back
I
to
have.
2
I
shot.
hope so anyway, Mr. Poole. Now, this
Good
there
shot. Fan
piece
down.
of glass is just about ready to blow a ball about 4 inches in diameter.
Put
And
a
if you'll
wide
notice
right
when
up
I
on
start
2.
to blow, I don't
And
stop
dolly
turning
back.
it.
Number 1, a tight 10 in your flames. Hold 1. Keep it sharp 1.
And a very perfect one that is.
On your flames, focus.
Now, in order to
focus,
put a
1.
sidearm on there, you blow a little hole on the side here, and not too big. You just get the glass hot in
your
one
flame.
spot and sort of give it a little bit of a puff. You dasn't get that glass too thin, or when you put the full force of the fire on it,
See
it
John
will
Lehman on his 6, number 1.
either enlarge or shrink.
Time period. 2 minutes. 2 minutes to Lynn. Dolly in 2. Dolly 2.
What were you doing then? Sealing off that end?
Parting
Yes,
to
so
give
when
you
I
2
blow on
minutes.
this here piece of glass, the air won't come
Okay.
out on the bottom. Now, you always get the heaviest piece of glass, the hottest. Of course, when you stick them together, you just give it a little pull out and just heat it a little bit more and then give it a little puff.
Hold 1. Fan left on 1. You're on.
And there you have the sidearm on. Now, I know in seeing some of the apparatus at the university that you've made for the various scientists, that you take this sidearm and bend it.
Yes, that's what I'll do now. He has to have a right angle bend on this so it'll fit on the top of his vacuum system.
Hold 1. Hold 3. You're on. Stay with it.
Now, when you make a bend, you dasn't get it too hot, or you dasn't get it too hot, and it should be hot enough so to make the bend, so when you make the bend, it won't kink, or it won't be a flat spot on it.
Well, also, doesn't on the plans, the drawings that you get from the scientists, they tell you exactly where they want that bend and how thick they want it.
That's right, Mr. Poole. They bring in their diagrams or their blueprints, and we have to make it exact to their specifications. Because they have everything planned out ahead of time with just what they want.
And over to Harding. Dolly and Dick.
Well, that's a brief glimpse at your work. I wish we had time to see a lot of it, because I know you make hundreds of pieces each year that help scientific research.
All right, get Mr.
Well, you
Poole
never
out.
get the same thing to do over twice.
15 seconds. Okay, stand by. Fuel in.
And so there we've had a very rapid and a rambling view through the studios of WAAM here in Baltimore to show you how we do the Johns Hopkins Science Review. We hope you've enjoyed your visit with us. I wish you could all be here at some time or other. And when you see the Johns Hopkins Science Review each week, I hope that you'll remember all these men that are here in the studio, way out in the control rooms, out in the announce booths, and all over the studio that have to be here in order to make this program possible. I think you also might be interested in knowing how this program is possible, how the program comes about, and how you are able to see it. All this that you've seen goes on here in the studio. But the management of WAAM has made it possible, through their cooperation over the past 2.5 years, for us to bring you this program. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be able to bring you the program. Then the DuMont network has made it possible. They give us the time and carry it. And all the stations that you see, the station that you're looking at right now, brings you the program as a public service. And we hope you'll be with us next week when we continue our story and show you what happens from this point until the program reaches your home.
Now that television has spanned the country from coast to coast, many television viewers wonder how programs are sent from New York and seen instantaneously in Los Angeles. Next week, the Johns Hopkins Science Review will have Dr. M.E. Strebe of Bell Telephone Laboratories as the guest to give a simple and exciting demonstration of how television is carried from studio to your home.
The Johns Hopkins Science Review is produced by Lynn Poole. Directed by Paul Kane. Associate producer is Robert Fenwick. Associate director, Ed Sarrell. Art direction by Barry Mansfield. Your narrators, Joel Chaseman and Ted Jaffe. Portions of this program have been mechanically reproduced. The Johns Hopkins Science Review originates in the studios of WAAM in Baltimore.
This is the DuMont Television Network. Now stay tuned for top wrestling matches from Columbia Park.